Those listeners with 2 kids and a 9 to 5 are just gonna have their jaw hit the floor. Ollie's saying, just fucking power through and watch it.
I'm sorry, but if you've got 2 kids, you know about the lack of sleep, so you can survive anyway, right? If you've been through those nights, if not.
Because the fun has stopped now. Like the fun at Tottenham, it really has stopped.
Like, what was the last sporting event that got you doing that as a fan?
Oh man, I'll tell you something recently. Did we talk about this on Not Another Sports Pod? I can't remember. Hello and welcome along to Not Another Sports Pod, episode 33 with myself, David, and a very happy Mr. Oliver Wilson today. Ollie, busy pod as always, mate. We're going to lead with the NFL. We're also going to talk FA Cup. We're going to talk about the unsackable Ange Postecoglou. I want to talk about Liverpool shock exit. Diego Simeone in Spain, 500 La Liga games. Cristiano Ronaldo turned 40 this week. Can he get 1,000 career goals? Ollie Wilson's got some golf chat, and there's plenty more. We'll probably squeeze rugby in there as well. There's plenty more besides. But Ollie, on Not Another Sports Pod, which is a weekly podcast, there's only going to be one pod every year where we lead with the NFL. And this is that podcast. So, mate, the floor is yours. Take it away. But before you explain why you're so happy and what happened in the Super Bowl last night, can you just answer me one question?
Yeah.
Okay. That is, the timing of the Super Bowl means that a European audience, unless you're a diehard fan like yourself, will never watch the Super Bowl, right? Has the US ever thought about moving it to maybe 1, 2 p.m. East Coast time, so it's evening European and kind of Africa time, that part of the world, and therefore excluding Asia? Or do they want to capture like that Asian Australian audience? Or do they just not care and it's a US sport, it's a US thing, and fuck everyone else, we're the United States of America, it's the Super Bowl, it's our event, it's happening at whatever fucking time we want, fuck you all, it's the greatest sporting event in the world?
I'm not sure everybody in the US is quite as bullish about it as you're trying to make out there, but I think it's just a case of they want to catch the primetime East Coast market, have it as late as possible for the West Coast market. If you had it early on the East Coast, people in the West Coast end up having their Super Bowl, with breakfast, which at the end of the day, it's meant to be like the official, unofficial holiday of the US, Super Bowl Sunday, and the Monday.
Ollie, sorry, mate, can I stop you really quickly? Are you recording on your mic as well? Your mic's recording, because I can hear you through the Zoom.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter as long as
okay. Yeah, all good.
Nice one.
Technical.
Carry on.
No, it's not a NASP pod without a couple of technical issues at the very beginning.
Can I also say, sorry, you're just finding your flow there, Ollie, but when you talk to our Not Another Sports Pod audience and you explain the importance of this event, just maybe you can kind of put it into context for everyone what this means, because I reckon that most of our audience aren't NFL fans, right? So just bear that in mind, maybe.
Well, okay, so the Super Bowl's like the grand crescendo, obviously, the final, if you will, of the NFL season to crown who is going to be champion of the NFL that year. And obviously, the NFL is the US's biggest sport. So because of the importance of that being kind of the be-all and end-all of the biggest sport in the US, and American football is such an American game, it just kind of embodies a lot of that US spirit, the drive, the fight, the desire, the working hard. You can turn it into that going for the American dream however you want. And the NFL is set up so that you can have the best team in the NFL gets help. The worst team in the NFL gets help the following season to try and become a better team by getting the best players coming out of college go to the worst teams, etc. So it's this whole, we were the worst, but 3 years ago we were terrible, and now we're the greatest side on the planet. Oh my goodness, living the American dream with hard work and dedication. So that's the kind of the importance of the sporting event that we're talking about, with all of that US charm laid on so thick. You then get Super Bowl Sunday, which is, as I say, an official, unofficial holiday in the US, because the US has more televisions sold in the week before the Super Bowl than any other week of the year, because people will buy brand new TVs for their Super Bowl parties. Like, families will gather, streets will come together. The Jubilee, when everybody had the bunting up, that's Super Bowl Sunday once a year, every single year for Americans and American sports fans. And there will be people that don't care, but now Taylor Swift is there as well with the Chiefs. Obviously, there's a few of those that didn't used to care that now care a little bit more. So the viewers just keep going up and up and up. And the Monday after the Super Bowl is the most taken day off sick in the US. They have more people taking sick days than any other day officially. So it's just a party day. And so they wouldn't move it from where it is because they get kind of prime time on the East Coast. They get a nice afternoon time on the West Coast, which allows people to gather their friends, have food, have drink, do all that. And let's face it, like the alcohol is very important when it comes to a Super Bowl party because the alcohol sponsors of the NFL pay a lot of money. You know, I think it's $8 million for a 30-second advert during the Super Bowl because it's the most watched sporting event in the US of the whole year. So it's a huge event with people that don't like the sport will go to a Super Bowl party because they like watching the funny adverts or the Kendrick Lamar halftime show because they have an hour halftime to have a big musical act playing. So it is the be all and end all of sporting Americana. And while the NFL's been great in terms of bringing games globally, they're obviously going to Australia in 2026. They're bringing a game to Ireland next year as well. So there's going to be 4 games between London and Ireland next year, let alone the game in Madrid and in Germany as well. So they're being great at passing this out and giving us kind of football, American football at times that Europeans can feast on. But the Super Bowl isn't going anywhere out of that time slot because if you want to watch it, the Americans are like, this is the biggest event. It has been the biggest event for so many years. Yes, World Cups get more viewers, etc. But this is our event and you will come to it and you will flock to it to view it. So you're going to watch it when we put it on.
But do you think the World Cup, obviously the World Cup final is the immediate comparison here because it gets, 3 billion viewers as opposed to the 500 million or whatever the Super Bowl gets. But do you think, Ollie, that that's a bit artificial in the sense that traditionally World Cups, a lot of World Cups have been held in Europe and our time zone is the sweet spot for the world because it means that you can, if you have an 8 p.m. kickoff, UK time, 9 p.m. in Europe, it means you can capture the entirety of the Americas. Mm-hmm. South America obviously love their sport. You've got North America. And also you will still get like Australia and Japan and all those guys kind of morning time. So do you think there's a kind of an artificial element there where just the sheer timing of the World Cup final of when it's on means it can capture more of a global share? I say this because if the Super Bowl was on at 8 in the morning UK time, or mate, even if it was on at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning, I'd get out for it. But people on a Sunday night tuning in at 11:30 just doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But I also, I wouldn't say the World Cup is artificially kind of generated views in that sense because of the sweet spot of timing. I think also it's just a more global sport, right? I mean, the NFL is trying to become that global sport, but for so many years, the one game that was shown on UK television would be the Super Bowl, and everything else you either caught up with. I think there used to be like a highlight show back in the day, but we didn't have live games being broadcast to the UK or anything like that. And I think as well, if you become a bit of an American football fan and you start going through the 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock kind of shifts, you'll inevitably end up staying up for one really late night game on a Sunday at some point. And because it's not a 1 a.m. start like the latest games on a Sunday and Monday night in the UK are, and actually it's 11:30 kickoff, it goes through till like 3, but you can go to bed at 3 and get up at 9 and have had 6 hours. Like, that's not the worst sleep in the world. I mean, I'll tell you, I did.
There speaks a man that those listeners with 2 kids and a 9 to 5 are just going to have their jaw hit the floor. Ollie's saying, just fucking power through and watch it.
I'm sorry, but if you've got 2 kids, you know about the lack of sleep, so you can survive anyway, right? If you've been through those nights of not having any sleep and trying to struggle through it. So the Super Bowl's no different. I mean, you love your child. How much do you love the Super Bowl? Come on, like. And I got to say, I do adore the Super Bowl. It's great. It's always been special to me staying up for it. There's nothing better than being tired. So your body's so shattered, and yet there's a spectacle in front of you that is either so close fought and gripping that you just can't take your eyes off it. You have to find out who's going to win. We didn't get that this year, but that was fine. That was all good.
Throughout my years of knowing you, Ollie, you've kind of been out to 3 or 4 as a fan or various work capacities. I know you've hosted a Super Bowl party before. So where were you last night? Just to set the scene before you tell us about the Eagles winning. You were out and about, were you?
Yeah, last night I was in the delights of Watford town centre. Just a beautiful picture. I actually turned up. I got an earlier train than I expected to.
The home of the Super Bowl, some people would say.
The spiritual home of the UK Super Bowl, even though the streets were dead empty, and we went for a TGI Fridays meal at 8:30, and the place was shockingly quiet. That makes you wonder. Super Bowl night, you'd have thought TGI Fridays would have a few people in coming to get some like burgers and ribs and stuff. I feel sorry for anybody who was working there. Terrible service as well, actually. Absolutely shocking. Nobody in the venue, 6 people working. And my mate had to go up to somebody to order a beer rather than them coming. We were sat at the bar as well. Yeah, pretty dark. And then we went to the spiritual home of a man who is becoming very much the mascot of NASP. Went to a walkabout, the spiritual home of Ange Postecoglou, of course. So it was nice to feel a home away from home and connected to NASP slightly, with the dodgy Aussie accents flying around and Pina Koala cocktail going onto the table. And that was busy. That had a lot of people had booked out spaces and big screens to watch the game. So it was a lively atmosphere, to say the least. And yeah, it was.
And the Eagles won. Apparently it was a whitewash, right? Just stormed to victory.
Demolishing. We've been really lucky. It's genuinely been about 10 years since a team had a proper whitewash of a Super Bowl, and this was a demolition. The Chiefs didn't get into Eagles territory. They didn't cross the halfway line until the fourth quarter of the game. They didn't score any points until the fourth quarter of the game. There was a run midway through, I think it was the second quarter, where Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs are going for a three-peat, right, as we discussed a few weeks ago. They're trying to win 3 Super Bowls in a row, which has never been done by any team, by any quarterback, even Brady and the Patriots. Tom Brady's got 7 rings, but never 3 in one run. And then they obviously beat the Philadelphia Eagles 2 years ago. Philadelphia looking for revenge, rebuilt squad, really good defense. And everybody kind of said, the Eagles have got a better team. The Chiefs have these kind of star power studs that have just been there, done that, got the t-shirt in these big moments, and it just didn't matter. Mahomes had a run of, I think it was 7 plays, where he was sacked 4 times. They had one run from their running back, and he threw 2 interceptions, including a pick 6, which is where you intercept the ball and take it back to the other end zone for a touchdown. And it was an onslaught from then. And we're allowed to get into this because it very much has been embraced by the NFL and the NFL community. There's a Shane Gillis joke from one of his original stand-up sketches about how there are no white cornerbacks left in the NFL. Like, they're a rare breed. There are 2 of them in a zoo somewhere. They won't mate. They won't create anymore, I think, is the joke from Gillis. And the Philadelphia Eagles this year drafted a young kid, Cooper DeJean, out of Iowa State, who is a white cornerback. And cornerbacks are basically fast, cover the wide receiver, play on defense. And not only did Cooper DeJean make that interception that was returned for a touchdown, becoming the first white quarterback in years to get a touchdown, let alone be playing in the NFL. But it was also his birthday. So he got an interception returned for a touchdown, his first interception in the NFL on his birthday, that basically turned the whole game completely in his team's favour, and the Eagles and him won the Super Bowl. And the Eagles had 2 birthday boys, DeJean and their running back Saquon Barkley, becoming the first players to win the Super Bowl on their birthday, which is just ridiculous. It was an onslaught. I mean, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, so to speak, Dave, because I know this is maybe out of some people's comfort zone, but I am enjoying a glass of fizz this morning, because it's not very often you get to enjoy celebrating your favourite teams and your favourite sport achieving your favourite thing and doing it in such a emphatic manner. It's the equivalent of Liverpool beating like Manchester United in their pomp 5-0 in a Champions League final.
There's nothing better. When sport goes your way, there's nothing better. Where is it next year? Ollie's got the champagne out for our YouTube listeners, and well deserved as well. Ollie was saying to me just off pod, he was like, it's ridiculous that people are saying congratulations to me when I am a viewer, not an athlete. And I said, yeah, man, but you buy the merch, you're part of the franchise. You putting money into the product, and therefore you are on some microscopic level part of the Eagles' success. No, will you take a bit of that?
I find it odd, the congratulations. I think just a nice one or something like that. Actually, people saying congrats does make it feel like this guy kept coming up to me last night in the pub. Very irritating man. It was a Chiefs fan who was saying, man, I could do, Patrick Mahomes needs to throw the ball rather than getting hit. I could do that. I can see that. I could do that. And I'm like, yeah, but you couldn't, and you can't do that. And then he was like asking me, can you let us just score some points? Let us score some points. But I'm not in control of this. Like, I don't have that ability to make anything happen here. So it's just more the emotional connection as a fan. It's true sporting fandom that I think as people that work in the sport, it's very easy to become a bit more desensitized to the highs and lows of it. And actually experiencing that true fandom. Like, I was jumping out of my chair left, right and centre last night. Just
beautiful.
When things happened.
That's it, man. That's Ollie and I were chatting pre-pod, and Ollie was like, so you were talking about how kind of childish it is to get so excited about sport, but that's the fucking thing. Like, it is childish. It's beautiful because it makes you feel that joy that you have when you're a child that gets chipped away at you as life progresses.
And we jumped on this early. Like, we got set up on the Zoom meeting a little early. And I fully admitted to you, Dave, I was lying doing some prep and I had the game on again because I wanted to rewatch it. I wanted to rewatch it that game finished 7 hours ago. And I was like, yeah, but I want to see it again. I just want to see it again because it's just, those are the moments you want to try and capture and bottle up and just remember as a sports fan.
And just wrapping up on the celeb stuff, Donald Trump was there, which was the first time a president has been there or something. I read that story and I thought it was unusual because I assume a president would always be at the Super Bowl, but not so.
Yeah, they're not always there. It's the first time in a long time that a president has been there. There is rumors.
Why? Because it's just seen as unpresidential to be there at the Super Bowl and they want to remain neutral.
I'm not really sure, to be honest, because they make the trip, they get the offer of the trip to the White House after the victory, like all major sports teams in the US do. So I don't really understand why presidents haven't been in the past, because you're going to welcome whichever team potentially comes to the White House. So it's not like you're currying favour with either of them. Didn't make any sense. Apparently there are rumours of the Taylor Swift, Donald Trump handshake behind the scenes last night, which would certainly bring the ire of the Swifties, who are already having a pretty bad morning that their team and Taylor didn't get a victory yesterday, which maybe does make the champagne taste a little sweeter, I have to say. But yeah, it's
you probably offered her a tax break on something, and it's incredible how quickly people's stances on things sort of melt away when there's a chance for a bit more extra cash. Or sympathetic towards her private plane use or something like that.
Yeah, half price on jet fuel taxes, and suddenly she's quids in. It's all good. But no,
Taylor Swift, the greatest.
What was the last time? I mean, genuinely, like when you jump out of your chair and you do that, like turn away from the TV, like 3 steps and a little fist pump of just yeah. Like, what was the last sporting event that got you doing that as a fan?
Oh man, I'll tell you something recently. Did we talk about this on Not Another Sports Pod? I can't remember. This isn't the same as, I could talk about numerous football ones, but I'm just going to talk about this slightly separately. So, Djokovic and Alcaraz were in the... what was... Yeah, Djokovic and Alcaraz in the Australian Open recently, and I was actually in Seville, which is one of the most aesthetically pleasing cities in Spain by a mile. Like, it's just this gorgeous, gorgeous city. And I was at the top of something called Las Setas, where you get like a beautiful view of the city, and this is like the history of that city is unbelievable, and it's just dripping in incredible architecture and Spanish charm. And all I wanted to do, Ollie, while I was at the top there, is watch the final set of Djokovic Alcaraz, and I'm not so affiliated with either of those that I was jumping up and down, but, very grown man, just like watching this at the top of Las Setas while everyone else was like, wow, like, isn't this incredible? Was something. But yeah, I think, football, because of the currency of a goal, will always, and possibly with the NFL, I don't know, the currency of like a touchdown is so significant and so game changing. I think that's at its core, I think that's why football is the most successful sport in the world, because the currency of a goal is so big. And in other sports, maybe the point system is just not quite as powerful as one goal.
Yeah, I think the equivalent, I think, of a goal in football is probably like a defensive touchdown, because you are taking the ball out of the other team's hands and getting 7 points on the board, which is like a big swing of momentum. You suddenly create like self-doubt in the opposition's offense. The defense kind of are showing that they can shut them down, stop them, and put points on the board, as well as the offense. So that's probably the equivalent. I mean, I remember being in Argentina with you when Liverpool did Barca in the Champions League, and it was the night after or before Tottenham and Ajax 2019 had that crazy one. Yeah, and those were 2 consecutive nights of, we were like probably 3 minutes from going on air, if that, heads out of the booze doors, just clamoring to get a view of a screen somewhere in that offense, because we were just trying to see this sporting magic kind of take place in front of our eyes and catch it in the moment rather than kind of reading about it or seeing a goal flash going on a mobile phone or something. And that's why sport is always, it's such a draw for anybody that's just a general sports fan. I don't know how you can not understand that love of just being so caught up in a competitive moment and seeing it play out live. And I think that's why live TV is always going to be there for sport. Even if everything else goes to streaming, I think live TV's still got a huge part to play for sport.
Let's talk FA Cup, Ollie. 3 big things struck me from the FA Cup this weekend. I'm going to go through them in the order of how relevant I think they are and how relevant I think they are. Let's start with my favourite topic on Not Another Sports Pod. I don't know how this podcast has become the Ange Postecoglou podcast, but it is. Ange Postecoglou is unsackable. He's actually unsackable. Mate, it's incredible the progression of Ange Postecoglou. There's no logical reason, really, why he should still be in a job. It's certainly not the league position. It's certainly not the performance in the Cups where he's out of 2 of the 3 Cup competitions he's in. It's certainly not his interviews and his demeanour with the media these days. He shouldn't really be in a job, I don't think. And I'm a big fan of him, but he shouldn't be in a job based on results alone. But he's become unsackable because, A, there's no genuine alternatives to take his place from now until the rest of the season. And B, because he does have this ace, this kind of pocket aces of 14 senior players injured, it is real. Like, it's not just a flimsy excuse. Like, that is a real thing, and he's right to kind of lean on that. But it's created this odd situation where a man who, by Premier League standards, Ollie, he should have been sacked 10 times over by now, is actually unsackable. And I tell you what, mate, if David Moyes was available, if Graham Potter was available, if a Conte or someone like that was available, they'd be in right now. No question about it. He would have got sacked on Sunday night after being knocked out by Villa in the FA Cup. But because those people aren't available, because there's no one available, it's Big Ange till the end. And I think that I said on Not Another Sports Pod last week that the game away at Liverpool in the second leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final and the game away at Aston Villa were the 2 biggest games in Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham career. I still think that's the case. I think this week has finished him like as a Tottenham coach. I think that when he gets sacked will be presumably the summer. But yeah, I think Ange Postecoglou is currently, he is unsackable at the moment. I do actually have an idea for Tottenham fans of who they should get next, but I don't know if you want to slot it in later in the pod when we talk about Spanish football, or are you chomping at the bit to hear it now, Ollie?
No, I'd like to hear this. Stay on the Postecoglou soapbox, because we stay on here quite a lot, but I thoroughly enjoy every trip to it.
Here's what Tottenham need to do. Forget the flavour of the month. Forget pretty football. Forget to dare is to do, or whatever random Latin motto you have. Like, forget all that stuff, okay? Forget your Mourinhos and your Contes, and forget all of this. You need to go out and get Diego Simeone, an Argentine winner, a snake in the grass genius. Someone who doesn't care about pretty football. He only cares about getting the right result and winning. His legacy at Atletico Madrid, where he's just crossed 500 La Liga games, is absolutely astonishing. That man is a winner, a leader, and he's someone that Tottenham, I think, should be going for. Now, his contract, he's still got 18 months left on his Atletico Madrid contract. The suggestion is he's not going to renew it. Obviously, the Argentine national job will be something he'll be after, but that's the kind of job. He's 54. He could take that in 10 years if he wants. So they need to go out and get Diego Simeone, because he's an antidote to what they've been trying to do unsuccessfully for, as far as I can see, the last 20 years. This let's play pretty football and try and win footballs. Let's get this, this great name in Mourinho or a Conte or this or that. Like, it just hasn't worked for them. So they need to go out and get a gritty winner. And Diego Simeone is that man. And if I was Daniel Levy right now, I'd be tapping up Simeone, and I would say, and I was going to talk about Diego Simeone during the La Liga section of the podcast, but I will just say now, he's been at the club since 2011, incredible loyalty, incredible longevity for a top club. I think he's the second longest reigning coach in Europe, and to do it at a really big club is very rare. Won La Liga twice, a Copa del Rey, a Super Copa, a couple of Europa Leagues. I mean, lost in 1 or 2 Champions League finals, can't remember, won the Super Cup as well. So it's had big success, and for Tottenham to be successful, for me, it's bye-bye Ange, hello, hola Diego.
Ange Postecoglou right now is like the MP who's caught in a scandal, and there was a point very early on where they should have resigned and stepped away, And all their advisors were like, no, you can stick this through. And then they've got to a point where they go, oh no, I should resign. And all the advisors go, well, no, actually, the time to resign was 3 months ago. Now you need to stick this out and you need to ride this thing till the wheels fall off. And it's probably going to end very badly for you. But Tottenham and Ange have just missed that point of like the dignified, look, it's not working, because they're trying to keep forces through. And I think you're incredibly correct in the injury crisis hasn't helped Tottenham, and that is kind of the ace in the hole for him in terms of an excuse at the end of the year, or at least it gives you enough sympathy that people have the opportunity to say, well, if he wasn't missing 12, 13 players for his starting 11.
It's an excuse, but it's real, right?
Yeah,
like that's a real thing. I mean,
it's one of those ones. It's the classic manager will go, I'm not saying it's an excuse, but this isn't it. We've got an injury problem. And it's like, well, you are saying it's an excuse. You're just trying not to say it's an excuse, but I get it. So it is there to kind of keep a little bit of redemption for Ange Postecoglou. But if the time to get rid of him was late December, without a doubt, to give somebody the wiggle room for a transfer window to do something.
I probably won't say this very often, not another sports pod, Ollie, but I thought Jamie Redknapp produced a very funny line when he said Ange Postecoglou is like that gambling advert. When the fun stops, stop. And it's just like, I thought that was really funny. Because the fun has stopped now. Like the fun, Tottenham, it really has stopped. Like,
it was
1 week they're winning
till
5.
October. Like November, It was like, well, we're trying to clamour something back because we had some fun, but we have lost quite a bit. And December, it was like scratching around, starting to steal money through your nan's purse.
That's exactly it. I mean, he's just, I don't know, the analogies for Ange, you could go on and on. It's he's kind of like, he's the friend that, after 3 drinks, he's the life and soul and everything's great. And the next thing you know, it's 1 a.m. and he's chatting politics in your ear and you just want him to leave, like, because it's all just got a bit messy. But I thought Jamie Redknapp got it spot on. When the fun stops, stop. But one thing I will say is that he does still have this lifeboat off the edge of the Titanic in the Europa League. Like, it is still there. And I think he'd have to win the Europa League now to keep a job. I don't even think reaching the final would be enough. He does still have the Europa League. I mean, it's a competition where there's some crap sides in the Europa League, Ollie. No one's dropping in from the Champions League this year. I mean, you look at it and you think, well, Man United, Tottenham, I think Lazio, is it Athletic Bilbao? Like, there's not, they're all sort of big clubs in their own right, but there's not too much to be scared about in the Europa League.
But if we were talking about Tottenham and Chelsea switched and Tottenham were in the Conference League and Chelsea were in the Europa League, I'd definitely be saying Ange can win that and could win it at a canter with this Tottenham side. I think the Europa League this year, there are sides that are not great, but we're not talking about a top Tottenham side. We're not talking about a top Premier League side. We're talking about a side that are struggling in the top level of English football a lot, like clear as day. And putting the eggs in a Europa League basket is the most unsafe basket you've ever seen. Like, it's one of those old wicker ones that's got a lot of holes in and it's snapped at the bottom, and there's basically an egg-sized hole in the very bottom middle of it where you have to put your hand over that hole to make sure you can carry those eggs without them all dropping out. It's just far too precarious and dangerous. So while it is technically a lifeboat, I wouldn't be saying if he won the Europa League, like, oh, all's fine, it's all good. I'd actually say, if anything, that's the best time for Postecoglou to have a mutual parting of the ways. Well, I did bring them some silverware. Look what they've done to other managers that have gone on to great things, like Nuno.
Ollie, he'd keep his job if he won the Europa League, no question.
Yeah, but I think Postecoglou should turn around and walk and go somewhere else more than anything else, because I don't think Tottenham is such an interesting club with the way that Daniel Levy kind of handcuffs managers and his team during a transfer window, because he doesn't want to spend that amount of money. He wants to run it as a maximum profit-making business more than anything else. And if Postecoglou won the Europa League, I'd say it would be the perfect time of a mutual parting of the ways. Levy doesn't want somebody that's going to put them in such a precarious position in the Premier League. Postecoglou has got silverware, and that's something credible that he can take to whichever next job he wants to go to.
Let's go through the rest of the FA Cup. Liverpool got knocked out away at Plymouth. I think it's a big FA Cup upset. I think the term giant killing always needs to be reserved for when a non-league side knocks out a professional club, in my opinion. But yeah, it's a massive, massive upset. I think something people get wrong about the FA Cup and Premier League sides is when a Premier League side goes out against a lower league team, the narrative is always, well, look at the starting 11. They didn't start with this player and that player. They didn't start their best starting 11. And that's actually the wrong way to look at it. What you need to be looking at is the subs bench. And Arne Slot didn't put Mo Salah, Cody Gakpo, Virgil van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold, who might be injured, but he didn't put these players even on the subs bench. So if you want to know how seriously Arne Slot took that game away at Plymouth, it's not the starting 11, which was kind of half decent, some youngsters, some players that can win the game. It's the bench. Because if Arne Slot really wanted to progress in the FA Cup, he would have played the starting 11 as it is, and then as soon as they went 1-0 down, he said, okay, enough's enough. Mo Salah, Cody Gakpo, you're on. You guys are, Alexis McAllister, you guys are on. And he didn't even have them on the bench, which tells you everything you need to know. I think Arne Slot, obviously he wouldn't want it to go through, but I think Arne Slot was more than comfortable to go out of the FA Cup, the fourth of the priorities, and say, look, this season is about the Premier League title. And it means that they won't have to juggle the squad too much. You can just play the best 11 in the Premier League. Squad won't be too thin. And go all out for that. And if they can pick up a Carabao Cup and go deep in the Champions League, it's a bonus. But this season is all about the Premier League for Liverpool. And I do think that getting knocked out by Plymouth, great day for Plymouth, by the way. Let's tip our cap to them, which I'm sure you'll do, Ollie. But just from a Liverpool perspective, I think the subs bench was so telling. And it always is with Premier League managers. In the FA Cup, do not look at the starting 11. Look at the subs bench.
Cue the English right wing. Bloody foreign managers coming in, disrespecting our FA Cup, not putting strongest sides out. I mean, I do think it's slightly a shame to some extent, because imagine if Arne Slot goes and does Champions League, Premier League, Carabao Cup, FA Cup in his first year at Liverpool. I mean, that would be unreal and not out of the question this year at all. That would have been phenomenal. It's asking a lot, but you'd say the Premier League is looking in a good place. You're one game away from the Carabao, so that's half of the job done. I mean, but also, there's no need to push hell for leather in an FA Cup that is just going to add more games when you've got an already over convoluted Champions League format.
The quadruple is impossible, Ollie. No one's ever done it. No one will ever do it. It's impossible.
Well, it's impossible.
The treble,
first team.
The treble is. Yeah. I think the quadruple is impossible, and I think it's so impossible that it's just been kind of dismissed in that way. The double, the treble, that's been done before. The quad has never been done, but the Q word, it's just never been done.
Yeah, but there was a little bit of me going into this weekend. It's like, well, it's an easy draw for Liverpool. Like, should get past Plymouth, regardless of who they put out. And then you're suddenly looking at a big advantage in the Premier League title race, as I say. You're looking at very strong performances in the Champions League. You can take the Carabao Cup in a few weeks' time. It would have just been hanging there tantalisingly. And it's not, a treble would still be obviously ridiculous for Arne Slot, particularly in his first year with Liverpool. But yeah, credit to Plymouth. I mean, you can talk about leaving big players off the bench, all that, but there are still some quality first-team players that were in that starting 11 and that were on the bench and brought on. And for a Plymouth side that have not had much go their way at all this season in terms of managerial changes that they've had to make, because Wayne Rooney was an absolute waste of space at that club more than anything else, as he has been as a football manager at a lot of football teams. And to get this is a big feather in the cap, at least something to hang your season on, and maybe build some sort of fight in the battle down at the bottom of the championship table. And credit to him. It's not a giant killing. I think you're right on that. I think it has to be a League One or League Two side against a Premier League side, or a League Two side against a Championship side. You have to at least have like two divisions of separation.
I agree.
Not National League and lower, definitely. Beating almost any EFL side, because there are still semi-pro teams. There's like 5 semi-pro teams, I think, still in the Vanarama National League. So there is a potential for the Mr. Bun the Baker, who plays centre forward on a weekday afternoon and stuff like that, is suddenly scoring goals in an FA Cup.
That's what you need. And if an electrician isn't scoring the winner, is it even an upset?
Well, is it magical? And, I'm glad we didn't. I was very lucky. I did Stoke against Cardiff this weekend in the FA Cup, and that was a 6-goal thriller that was finished on penalties, 3-3, and it was great. 2 young attacking midfielders stole the show in Lewis Kumas and Ruben Colwill. But I'd never found the moment to say, "Oh, cup magic's in the air," when Stoke came back from 2-0 down, because that's not cup magic. That's an average championship afternoon half the time, that a team's like 2-3-0 up and it'll blow it away or something like that. So it doesn't have that same feel. The magic is when it's big against small, giant killings, David against Goliath. Everything else is just kind of second and first tier football at this point.
Let's wrap up the FA Cup chat with League One Leyton Orient home against Manchester City. Be in my bonnet about this, Ollie, because Leyton Orient score after 16 minutes. Jamie Donnelly has an effort from near the halfway line, and if you haven't seen it, Ortega, the City goalkeeper, it ends up as an own goal. And all the headlines straight after was like, it's an incredible goal, it's a great goal, one of the greatest FA Cup goals, blah, blah, blah. It's a crap goal, because an own goal can never be a great goal. Like, that's an oxymoron. Anytime it's an own goal, it cannot be a great goal. Like, it's a good strike, like it's great vision, great awareness, but it's ultimately like not a great goal because it's an own goal and the keeper should have done better. So yeah, I reject the whole that was one of the great FA Cup goals, because I don't think. Well, let me ask you: can an own goal ever be seen as great?
No, it's the same as and it's very easy to make a call in the moment initially, but a deflected strike that loops over a keeper. At first, you'd be like, oh, it's wonderful, because you think it's just bent that way into a top corner or something. And then you see it and you're like, you have to retract it and say, oh, it's actually a lot of luck more than anything else. Same with a goal like that, coming off the crossbar, coming off the keeper's arse and going in. Like, if you're able to say that, it suddenly sounds comical and farcical, and a farcical goal isn't a great goal. I mean, you compare it to Josh Windas's goal from a few weeks back, where he's well inside his own half, and it is pure. It's struck so hard. It's a low-flighted ball that the keeper hasn't got a chance to get to, but it's always going to dip underneath the crossbar. And it's one of the best halfway line goals that you'll ever see, as good as anything that like Beckham or anyone's done. And for then this to be put in the same category as those kind of Beckham goals, it's just sacrilege more than anything else, because it's not. He's actually missed the target. If you really want to be finicky about it, he's missed the target. It's just because it's against City. It's a storyline, and it's a young loanee who has had some ups and downs with his spell at Leyton Orient, but is very, very talented, who's produced the goods. Yeah.
Right, let's go on to European football, Ollie. I was going to talk about Diego Simeone here, but I think we've more or less covered it. I'm actually out in Barcelona, covered La Liga this weekend.
300 million clicks, aren't you now, Dave?
Well, probably. You know what's odd? So I commentated on a goal for Real Betis, and Anthony, the former current Man United player, is on loan at Betis, and he scored. And I was chatting to Ollie on WhatsApp over the weekend about how even in what was a kind of a mid-table La Liga clash that you think maybe isn't going anywhere and you're not quite sure, how many people are really listening to that, you're always just one moment away, one narrative away from your clip, from that goal, ending up on Twitter and the internet and going quite viral. And ended up with sort of 4 million views, which is probably, Ollie, like the most people that have ever watched one of my goal calls, like if I'm being honest. Do you know what I mean? Like those are huge numbers. And like, look, I'm not, quite obviously it could have been anyone commentating on that, or it could have had no commentary. Like, it's 100% not about me, but also like my voice is on that clip, and 70% of people listen to everything on every video without sound. It's worth remembering that just in life generally. 70% of videos on the internet are viewed without sound. So, wow. Maybe I only got a 30% share of that 4 million, but I will take it, Mr. Wilson. And it also, go.
Well, also, if Anthony goes on to do something fantastic at Betis and take them to Copa del Rey or something like that, that is the start of that journey, and that clip will end up being taken by outlets all around the world. It'll be on the Real Betis in English video of the season or whatever. It will be the start of that story. So even if it wasn't viewed millions of times already, there is always that chance of but if that becomes the narrative, like that is the first step on the road to glory, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I was pleased. We talk, I think, within commentary worlds about, some commentators kind of script lines, some have ideas for lines, some just react to what they see. And I personally don't script lines not because I think I'm better than anyone else. I completely don't. I think some scripted lines can sound fantastic, but I just personally feel like the say what you see is usually the best. But with Anthony, I did have the he failed at Man United, he failed at Man United, he failed at Man in my head. So It naturally comes out, that he was. He failed at Man United. Hopefully I said it a little bit more articulately than that. But, anyway, Ollie. Yeah, but it also reminded me, I remember Ollie did an international game, and it was, it wasn't two big nations, was it, Ollie? You'll remember exactly. Yeah. But there was an own goal within 15 seconds, something like
15 seconds, yeah. 13 seconds, the own goal, yeah.
And that also went viral because, of course, it would. You as an own goal in 15 seconds is absolutely absurd. Millions and millions of views. But that would have been a game where you sort of prepped for that and went into the commentary booth, Ollie, and thought, there's always a part of you thinking, okay, who's going to be listening to this? What's the narrative here? What's the story? And realistically, I mean, how many people listen to an international friendly of Latvia? You know what I mean? Or Real Betis away at, Celta Vigo. I mean, not many, but you just never know. You never know.
Yeah, it's it goes back to all the stuff we've been doing in South America as well. It takes one of those players to have one big moment that ends up being a thing that gets them noticed as a move, or we could be doing the next Brazilian young wonder kid who then that clip gets shared because he ends up with a move to Chelsea 4 months later or something like that. I mean, it sounds so preachy, and I hated this because I went and did a talk back at my university, and we all kind of said things like, well, there will be points where you might have to do work for free, which I don't really condone, but it just sometimes has to be done. And the idea of always be prepared because you never know what's going to happen in sports broadcasting. There was actually a young man who worked for England cricket as a press officer now. And he was telling a story. They asked us what our favourite moments were in commentary, and he was telling a story about how he'd done this England player, former England cricketer, had got multiple motor neurone disease, and they'd done this documentary about him, and this guy's wife had come up to this bloke, the guy who was on this panel, and asked him to write the obituary, and they made a 6-figure sum for his foundation, and everybody in the audience is so moved, and it's a really touching moment. And I'm the next person of what's your best moment in your career? And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? You give me this story of love and emotion and devotion and a beautiful tale. And I'm like, yeah, I said a goal was good once. That was pretty cool, wasn't it? Yeah,
do not downplay the art of football commentary and the impact you've had on people's lives, Mr. Wilson. Let me just wrap up on the Euro football stuff.
Sorry.
I just want to ask one question to you, Ollie. Is Harry Kane underrated? I only say this because I was looking at his records for Bayern, and his records are absolutely absurd. He's essentially broken every Robert Lewandowski record, apart from the 41 goals in one Bundesliga season. He came close last year, picked up an injury at the back end of the season, didn't quite do it. But I was looking at this. So in his first 50 Bundesliga games, he scored 55 goals. Now, Erling Haaland previously had the record with 50 goals in 50 Bundesliga games. Harry Kane has broken every record that Lewandowski had before him. And he's doing it in a way worse Bayern side. Lewandowski was playing in one of the great Bayern sides. Harry Kane's doing it in one of the way worse sides. He's now scored 28 straight penalties for club and country. I don't know. I've never been the biggest Harry Kane fan, but when you look at his stats, they're absolutely unreal. And I reckon he wins the title with Bayern this year. They're sort of 9 points clear, or 7 points clear, I think, top of Bundesliga at the moment. I think he then goes back to Tottenham under Diego Simeone. And I think he becomes the all-time Premier League record goal scorer. There's my niche prediction for 2026.
No, he does it. He goes back to Tottenham. Ange Postecoglou's still there. He never scores in 3 years. Ange is just left fuming. I mean, the trouble is that Kane was at Tottenham and didn't win any silverware. So that's always going to hinder you in terms of attracting a proper global attention. You can score great goals.
He's never played in a great side.
Yeah, but
Tottenham, England,
Bayern always excelled in terms of scoring goals. He's always been consistent, quality, and can move pieces, which has been touched on so many times as well. I think we're kind of repeating superlatives that Harry Kane's had thrown at him throughout his career. But not winning silverware in England hurt him. Going to Bayern was seen as an easy way to win silverware, and obviously there was the irony that he didn't when he first turned up at Bayern Munich. It was the first season they hadn't had silverware in however many years, and it was Harry Kane's brought the Tottenham curse. But I don't think that helped either, because that immediately makes everybody's attention go, oh, well, no more. That's over there now, but nothing happened then when my attention was first there. So actually now I'm going to start coming back over to where I normally watch my football, which is England. And then for country, I mean, was a letdown at the last European Championships at the end of the day. It was a big letdown. It was a missing piece of a puzzle that didn't seem to fit. And whether that's Kane's fault or Southgate's fault, it doesn't look good for him. You can score all the goals for England, but if you're not scoring the goals in the big moments, again, it's tough to look at. And it will always hinder him until he does something really special, probably in an England shirt or in English football, I'd have thought, because I think people will always look at this move to Bayern a bit like I look at the move of Pep Guardiola going there of, yeah, you're meant to win at Bayern. You're meant to keep scoring goals. I mean, it's not as good as this Bayern side as it has been in the past, but it's still the best team in Germany, and Harry Kane is a huge part of that reason. But it's going to be tough because it's seen as a step to make easy silverware more than anything else. I wanted to ask you, Dave, because I asked you a question about European football earlier in the week, and I just wondered if you'd had any more thoughts about this. Because obviously we had Cristiano Ronaldo, did the interview earlier on in the week, it's a few days ago now, kind of saying, look, I think I'm the greatest player of all time. People can have their favourites, Messi's, your Pele's, your Maradonas, but as an all-round game, I think I'm the greatest player of all time. I don't think there's anybody else as good as me. Which, if you're Cristiano Ronaldo, you firmly understand that self-belief, because that self-belief is what has got him to being in that conversation anyway, right? And I kind of said to you, look, everyone will have that debate of who's the best, and Ronaldo's named kind of the four, himself, Messi, Pele, Maradona, as like greatest players of all time, right, that we're going to think about. But I did ask you a question that I wonder if you'd had any more time to percolate on, of the worst footballer that you've seen. Or I think the other thing is the worst footballing situations. You know, as somebody who should be up here and has been nowhere near the level of expectation.
So I did ponder on your question. Ollie asked me earlier, who's the worst footballer you've ever seen? And I decided that without a definition of that, I way prefer the second part that you just added there. Because the worst footballer, I mean, is that someone I played with at school, in the park, a five-a-side league? Like, so, because the Premier League footballer is obviously not the worst footballer. So redefine that again. So ask that question again, Ollie, with your new definition.
Yeah, what is the worst footballer that you've seen who hasn't lived up to the expectation that he was meant to live up to?
I think I'll answer this fully next week, but two that pop into my head instantaneously. I think Fernando Torres, when he went to Chelsea for 50 million, which back then, by the way, 50 million was a lot of money. There was 18 months where Fernando Torres was by far and away the best number 9 in the world. And he went to Chelsea and he was a disaster, an absolute disaster. Shevchenko, the same in some ways. And I remember both of those, I thought, wow, like I couldn't believe that a player could fall so quickly. I would also say this is a bit more of a niche club question. But when Mario Balotelli went to Liverpool, I was expecting overhead kicks and great goals and red cards and, 6 months out with this and that, and didn't get any of the good stuff, just got all the crap stuff. And I remember at the end of that spell just being like, oh, Mario Balotelli's actually just like a bit shit. Like I didn't see anything good when he was at Liverpool. And obviously he's had an up and down career and he's had some great moments and stuff. And, can't remember where he is now. I know he moved somewhere recently. Can't remember exactly where. But yeah, I was disappointed by that one. But I think in terms of well, this might actually lead very nicely onto something I wanted to bring up, Ollie, which is Neymar going back to Brazil and going back to Santos.
Yeah. Well, you know who was their first choice, don't you?
Santos' first choice.
Yeah, Santos' first choice around this window was they were sniffing around Sheffield Wednesday's Josh Windass. And it was a move that was kind of rejected by the club and never really ended up materialising more than anything else. But that was the first strong rumour of Santos wanted to bring somebody in, and they were certainly contemplating, the name was thrown around, of Sheffield Wednesday's Josh Windass, which is crazy, but he had a run recently of 5 goals in 5 games. He has been a key in Daddy Roll's side at the moment, and when they've played their best has been when Windass has been playing at his best in this campaign. But I just thought it was funny that Neymar is now the backup choice to Josh Windass, which I think as a footballer is the best little moniker you could have. I'll be using that in the dressing room every week at Hillsborough. Oh, lads, they had to settle for Neymar instead of me. You know what I mean? Like,
so Neymar went to Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia, Ollie.
Classy move.
And he cost the club 322 million British pounds. And in return, he contributed 7 appearances, 3 assists, and 1 goal. Now, I did some digging because I couldn't believe these statistics. I thought, no way, Al Hilal must have had some kind of insurance, and how does that work exactly with the money? Surely some of it was held back. But honestly, all I could find out there, and someone feel free to get in contact and correct me, all I could find, I'm going to say it again because it's just, it must be the most insane use of money in football history. Al Hilal bought Neymar, and he cost the club 322 million British pounds for 7 games, 3 assists, and 1 goal. By the way, that's not necessarily Neymar's fault. The guy was injured. What can you do? But as an absolute catastrophic disappointment in terms of financial outlay to footballing ability back in, that has got to be pretty close to the summit. I thought that was absolutely insane. And actually, Ollie, when you look at the transfer fees that Neymar has elicited over the years, I mean, he remains for 200 million Paris Saint-Germain spent on Neymar. It remains the highest transfer record ever. And you know what? In the current climate, I'm not sure that 200 million gets touched anytime soon. When I say 322 million Al Hilal, I'm factoring in the wages and everything like this because the upfront cost wasn't there. So the 200 million that Paris Saint-Germain spent to get Neymar from Barcelona to Paris is a transfer record that I don't think will get touched anytime soon, man. I don't know if European clubs have that money anymore. I don't know if...
makes that big move in the summer.
Well, Alexander Isak, of course, 201 million to somewhere. But I just think, if you think about the money that football clubs have spent on Neymar, it's incredible. And obviously, I did a deep dive on Neymar, by the way. So he's gone back to Santos. Apparently, he's taken a 99.9% pay cut, which I thought was quite funny because I don't know, you could kind of reframe that into Neymar the socialist. He's taking a 99.9% pay cut to do what he loves. But there's so many great stories with Neymar popped up, Ollie. I mean, for a start, he's not living in Santos. He's living in Rio, where he's got a penthouse, and he's taken a helicopter to training. I mean, bro, just rent a great pad in Santos. Like, it can't be that hard. Like, it's when you've got unlimited money, that's literally like, you ask your PA to do that and it's done within a day. Like, the best house in Santos is done. So quite why you'd be taking a helicopter. And by the way, celebs and choppers, be careful there. I would be careful. But that struck me as incredible that the Neymar was taking a helicopter to training from Rio to Santos.
How does that give any sense of team camaraderie? Like, people, it must be tough at some of these clubs anyway, of like, some guys will get paid a lot more than others, and you get this at a lot of football clubs anyway, but there will be some clubs where there's a guy who can turn up driving his Ferrari, and there's a guy who turns up driving his, like, very nice Peugeot coupe or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, the golf in wages would be very clear to show. But how do you integrate yourself as part of that squad as just one of the lads when everyone's parked in a normal car park like a human being would, and you're Neymar, who is using the second training pitch as his personal helicopter pad to land in for training, and then jumps back in it again and bounces off? I mean, and again, like, you're so far away from the rest of the team. Oh, you want to go out for dinner after training or anything? Nah, okay, going back to Rio in the helicopter, lads. So got stuff to do.
Why, Ollie, would be my question. I mean, it's so unnecessary, mate. Like, just rent somewhere in Santos. I don't. So I don't.
You could build somewhere next to the training ground. You could build your own house. They would probably give you some of the land, Neymar, to build that training ground on. You are so beloved by that club going back there, and like, there's part of it that's a wonderful story until you get into the fact of how Neymar's treating his return to Santos, and like, it's not actually that wonderful. On the face of it, it's great going back to a boyhood club. And actually, in reality, it's just like,
But okay, let's make the case for Neymar, Ollie, because it's not his fault that these clubs wanted to give him this kind of money. Anyone would take it, and he spent it in kind of interesting ways. I heard he's bought an island off the coast of Brazil for 10 million. He's got a huge place in the UAE. He's got a place in Miami. Obviously, numerous properties in Brazil. So it's not Neymar's fault. It's also not Neymar's fault that he's been injured so much throughout his career. I mean, wonderful footballer in his peak, had terrible injuries. So none of this is Neymar's fault. He could do nothing now. He still wants to play football. He's gone back to Santos. I just tried to look to see if Santos are in the Sudamericana this year. Not sure if they are. Might be one for on Ollie Wilson's distant radar, depending on what happens this week, Mr. Wilson. But, so, I don't know. He's gone back there, you'd like to think, for football reasons. And if he can stay fit somehow, he's not an old man. I think he must be 32, 33. Like, who's to say he can't score a few goals and propel Santos up the Brazilian standings? And maybe this can be take them back into the Libertadores. I mean, what a story that would be.
Yeah, but it's like saying there's the guy that gives, 50% of his money to charity, and then there's the guy that gives twice as much as that, but it's 0.5% of his earnings, and then he goes and spends the rest on dumping oil into a seal pond or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there's ways in which you go about the humanitarian story of things, and unfortunately for Neymar, that any charm of the way that he's going about on his return to Santos is taken off by the fact that he's getting a helicopter in and out of Rio every other day to go to training. And I don't begrudge anybody making the money, but you can do things with it that don't make you look so kind of egregiously above everybody else, which, again, it's not your fault that you've got that bank account. And maybe if I had that money, I would think about doing the same thing. But I think in general...
No, you'll be golf courses, Ollie.
Oh, it would be.
You'd be buying golf courses.
I'd be flying into Pebble Beach this afternoon. Lombardi
in
trophy,
a helicopter,
Super Bowl
though?
trophy. No, not a chance. No way. I just wouldn't fancy being in one of those. I remember breaking the story of Kobe Bryant's death. We were on TalkSport, and that news hit that night, and it was like, oh, crap. Like, this happens to people. I mean, Colin McRae had, obviously, his tragic accident as well. Sport, as you say, sportsmen and helicopters, sportsmen and women in helicopters just is not a...
The Leicester owner. I mean, there's numerous examples.
Just not... I don't like a helicopter at all. I'd love to fly one. I'd hate to sit in one, if you know what I mean. Being in control of it and feeling like you have that element of control is way better, I think, than being sat in it and having somebody else controlling it. And if something goes wrong, you have no idea what to do. No, thank you. But I don't wish that on Neymar, I'd like to say, by the way. I'm not wishing that on him. I'm a bit of a curmudgeon.
No, it's just a caution.
Yeah,
I just don't want it.
I just don't want it to be a headline in 3 months' time of like, you know, it gets misty and foggy over those hills around Rio. I mean, it's, it sits uneasily, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked. They're not in the Sudamericana, Ollie. Obviously, the Brazilian league system starts properly, I think, in March or April. So they're currently in the Paulista, which is like their regional tournament. So a little bit of time for Neymar to bed in. Jefferson Soteldo is also at Santos, would you believe, Ollie, the Venezuelan. So there's some. Yeah, he's back. Great little cult figure in South American club football.
Well, that's two quality creative midfielders right there who like to play a very similar positions. You put one on one side and one on the other. I mean, it's a devastatingly good attacking potential.
I mean, it'd be some story. You know, if Neymar could bring him back to the Libertadores, it'd be some story. Right. Let's move on slightly then from world football to... I think we're in the any other business section of the pod as we creep towards an hour, Ollie. So here is Mr. Wilson's golf corner, or did you want to talk rugby union or anything? Oh, by the way, have you ever heard of Antoine Dupont?
Antoine Dupont? No, is he a rugby player, though?
Yeah, correct. Apparently he's the Messi of the rugby world.
Okay. I mean, the name rings a bell, but I mean, I'm very, as I think we touched on last week with the Six Nations, I'm quite detached from rugby at the best of times anyway. I mean, there was a very odd advert on Sky last night, which was, hey, American football fans, if you like this, why don't you try Rugby League? That's what's coming up in the next few weeks on Sky. And it was this weird, like, in American football, you have 4 downs. Well, in rugby, we have 7. And, like, all this kind of stuff. And it was very much like the advert that you'd give to an American to get them into rugby, but not an American sports viewing public. I don't know. It's very peculiar. I mean, I've never really got into rugby league, but it's not ever been in the household too often, I have to say. So the Six Nations slightly bypassed me. Sounded like it was, from all accounts, it was a very strong win from England over France, and a really good game of rugby to watch. I might actually be tempted to try and watch the highlights of it at some point.
And Ollie, I'm in a WhatsApp group with a mate who was there, and he said, I'd take any given rugby international over any given football international, I'd say. Brackets, barring big tournaments. So, barring the things that actually matter. But, 81,000 at Twickenham. I'm pretty sure it's not called Twickenham anymore. It's called something else due to sponsorship reasons. But, yeah, I mean, 81,000, like rugby fans, they do still pack a stadium for the big games.
Well, Six Nations rugby is massive. If you're a rugby fan, it's big. It's transcending out of rugby, that fandom. That's the problem for rugby at the moment. I mean, I would take a rugby international over any non-major tournament international for England, because the Nations League is just competitive friendlies, or there's friendlies, which are rubbish. Whereas England internationals, they either do the welcoming over of the Southern Hemisphere tests with South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, best in the world, and there's a bit of kind of Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere rivalry. Or you've got the Six Nations, which is the domestic continental Great Britain and Ireland plus France and Italy rivalry, which is also very good and competitive and considered, but that's considered a major tournament. So the only ones that are probably not major tournaments are the tests against the Southern Hemisphere guys, I'd say, or when they play maybe the odd one against Argentina or Georgia. But that doesn't happen as often outside of a World Cup in rugby. So every major international for England rugby is a kind of like a major tournament game. So of course it's going to be better than non-major tournament football, which is meaningless because it's a friendly or a Nations League game. So sorry, mate. Not to slag off your
No.
point,
It's totally fair. Let's talk.
It's definitely wrong. That's all I'm saying.
Let's talk. Let's talk golf.
Well, big news in the golf world. There are two big pieces of news in the golf world, to be honest, this week. One was that the Waste Management, which is the Waste Management Open in Scottsdale, Arizona. Scottsdale, Arizona, a huge party town. The Waste Management golf there has been a organic growth of a party frat boy environment at a golf tournament, and it's very unique on the PGA Tour. It's out in this beautiful golf course just outside Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, and it's slowly developed into this boozy drinking culture. And I went there a few years ago, and we're talking like every guy is there in their Ralph Lauren polo, pair of shorts, shades, and drinking Miller Lights all day. And every other girl there is in their cowgirl boots, jeans shorts, cowgirl top, drinking White Claws all day. And it's just
Sounds fun.
I mean, it's fun if you like that kind of thing. And if I was 25, it would have been right up my street kind of thing. Unfortunately, I was obviously mid-30s at that point, and I was a bit more like, man, I want to watch the golf here now. I want to see some sport being played. But and that's the thing. A lot of people go there and don't really watch the golf. And they have this big stadium hole on the 16th par 3, which is surrounded completely by 3 tiers of grandstands. Very unique again in golf. And somebody gets a hole in one, they chuck cans and beer all over the course, all over that hole, all over the green. They just launch them on in like celebration. And if somebody does really badly and misses the green on the par 3, then they get booed, berated and chastised from the fans. And it's quite an intimidating atmosphere for the golfers to go and play in. And it's one that they kind of enjoy because it's different. And last year, everything overstepped the mark a bit too much. They called it the wasted management because people were drunk, like off their asses, sliding down hills, walking into fairways, causing problems. People were gambling on the golf and then trying to put other golfers off to make sure their bets came through on like putts and stuff. I mean, it was really getting to a point where like fans were arguing with players and players were arguing back, which is not the decorum that you want to see at a golf event, let alone a sporting event. And there was a fear that it overstepped the mark. And I actually thought it was really good this year in that there weren't really, unless I've missed something dramatic from yesterday while watching the Super Bowl, there weren't any major kind of incidents or problems, which makes it seem like the PGA, the tournament kind of hosts have worked on getting this kind of under control again. And we went past that tipping point last year, and now, you know, the swing has just gone back the other way and everybody's just a little bit less on edge than it was last year, and now it's all quite calm. So I think that's great for golf to have that unique atmosphere back without overstepping the mark. And then the people that have tried to take that atmosphere, monetize it for their own advantage, which is Live Golf, because they really want to bring that party atmosphere to the golf tournament, and they encourage that sort of behavior like we see at the Waste Management at every single one of their events, have just signed a new TV deal. We talked about it with Fox Sports in the US. ITV is now going to be showing Live Golf, which is big because I think sport going on domestic television, a lot of people have Sky or cable TV or whatever you want to call it.
I gave a rant about ITV last week, Ollie. I'd like to retract that entire rant and say that ITV is a great network and it's accessible to all. I love the fact that it's free. So, yeah, if the bosses at ITV are listening, then, just bear that in mind.
I just think getting sport on domestic television that isn't pay to view is a really big deal, because that's what so many of us grew up on, and what made sport fascinating and what sucks you in was the limited amount that was on domestic TV if you didn't have Sky. But you also then took in as much sport as you could, like we were talking about with things like the snooker last week and the darts and stuff. And it can only be good for Live. It's not all going to be on ITV1. It's going to be partly on ITV2 and 3 and available on ITVX as well for streaming. But it's going to be there in some capacity, and it's a positive step. It's a huge step for Live again in terms of having that legitimacy. And there's still enough big names on that tour that people will tune in. If it's there on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon, and it's like, okay, yeah, we'll just stick the Live Golf on for a few hours and watch that play through. It's a really big opportunity. I'm really quite excited by it and see how they do it. If they're just going to take the Live golf production, which I imagine they will, because they won't want to spend a load of money in doing it themselves, I'm sure. Or if they will, put a few extra kind of bells and whistles on it to make it a bit more of ITV's own broadcast somehow. But yeah, it's a big move. It keeps on legitimising the push from Liv.
One thing, just scrolling back, sorry, Ollie, something I've noticed that I wanted to talk about today and haven't. Cristiano Ronaldo turned 40 last week, and the big narrative around Cristiano Ronaldo now is, will he score 1,000 career goals? He's got 924, I believe, in 1,255 games, which is absolutely bonkers. Might not be exactly the statistics because this was like a week ago, but he's got, well over 900 goals. Now, historically, people always said that Pele got 1,000 goals, but the reality is a lot of those were in friendlies, unofficial matches. It's not on camera. I think that argument that Pele's scored 1,000 goals gets weaker and weaker every year in the modern world. The thing is with Cristiano Ronaldo, if he does get 1,000 goals, every single one of those goals is recorded. Every single one of those 1,000 goals, if he hits it, will be recorded. I mean, he still needs, Ollie, like 70 odd goals.
It's not small.
And he's 40 years of age. So that's 3 more years in the UAE, maybe 4 more years. So I think it's pushing it, because he's not going to score many goals for Portugal, I don't think, from now. But I guess if he does 3 or 4 more years in the UAE and scores 20 goals a season, he could do it.
He's taking every penalty, isn't he? It's not. Nobody else is getting their hands anywhere near a spot kick for club or country. I think it'd be possible. I think it would be a grind. I think it would take maybe a couple of excellent seasons. If you have a 30-goal season at some point, that's a big break in the camel's back, so to speak, to kind of get that number down. But
and if he does it, does that make him the greatest ever?
Well, I was going to say, is it right to cling on forever just to break this sort of record? I mean, that's like the punch-drunk boxer who's still just, I want to have 100 fights in my career or something. You're still going that little bit too far. I don't think it guarantees him the greatest ever at all. The fact that the greatest ever conversation is made and there's not a single defender that goes into that greatest ever is baffling. Because you could look at there's that incredible stat that Baresi and Costa Curta had 65% of their games together, playing together, were clean sheets. Baresi is considered better than Costa Curta, and arguably you.
Yeah, but that's not why people tune in for football, Ollie. It's not baffling because it's totally.
But does that not make you there are so many different elements to football? Keeping
there
a clean
are,
sheet.
mate, but the main one is scoring goals.
But look at Burnley. As we touched on, they've conceded 9 goals so far in 32 games this season in the Championship, and at the moment they're ahead of Sheffield United on goals difference in the knockout spot, in the automatic promotion spots, because of how good they are defensively. They're miserable going forward. It's terrible, but you have to admire there's more than one way to win a football game, Dave. And if you are the best at keeping sides from scoring, that is as good as scoring goals, because you only need one if you can guarantee pretty much that you're stopping a side from scoring. That's the way to win a football game.
Ollie, we've got nearly 1 hour and 10 minutes without you complimenting the backdrop here that I've got in a kind of a grungy part of Barcelona. Everyone's still waiting for the big Ollie Wilson home office reveal. Is it a 2025 job, or are we talking 2026, Ollie?
It's 2025. It's in the books.
Yeah?
Yeah, dates have been set.
The architect's doing the sketches and the numbers are being sliced and diced.
Oh, the numbers have been crunched. The date of scheduled liftoff is on the horizon. Don't worry.
Oh, exciting, man.
Yeah.
That's it. I didn't expect you to say that, actually. So is it sort of summertime or later in the year? And what can the viewers expect to see behind you? Are you going to go just sports memorabilia? Are you going to go a plant? Are you going to go exposed brick? What are you thinking?
A lot of great things in the background, Dave. They're going to be so many things, so many sports things. You're going to love them.
I loved your backdrop from 2018-19 when you had the blue light and the NFL ball.
Yeah, we're gonna have. There's definitely going to be some NFL stuff. There's going to be some things from Super Bowls that I've been to. There's going to be some golf paraphernalia, and there might be a couple of football bits as well. Maybe some Formula One bits too, because that's obviously coming up in about a month's time. That is kicking off. I mean, we're round the corner from the business end of the football seasons. The obviously the Nations League and stuff continuing, but in football, but we're not too fussed about that, I think, at the moment. But the Formula One kicking off. We've got the whole of the NFL off-season now, Dave, to get into, which I know you're itching to know about how the draft works.
The Libertadores and Sudamericana group stages starting, Ollie. I mean, it's all coming together in one big sport melting pot. Do get involved in our YouTube channel as well. We're up to a mighty 28 subscribers now. So if you want to join the party over there and check out the backdrop I'm talking about, then get involved.
Go Birds.